All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 5th meeting of the Urban Village Development Commission. Looks like we have a nice full house of commissioners on this election night. Thank you. Go ahead and call the meeting to order at this time. And first order of business is the meeting minutes from October 15th. Everybody should have received that in the mail. Did you all have a chance to take a look at that? Any edits or concerns? Yes, Nina?
I just have a couple corrections on page 2, and I made a copy of my corrections about my disclosure. I actually work for the organization I work for is called Highlands Council, and I just made notes here, and I'll pass them over for amendment, just technical stuff.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay. Thanks. I like these meeting minutes. I think you guys have heard some of our concerns, and these are more detailed, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You should thank Susan. That's really all
Well, let's
we're
thank
doing.
Susan then.
Yay!
Thank you, Susan. So, now the moment of truth. Anybody like to make a motion?
I move that we adopt the meeting minutes of 15 October.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Thank you. So now we're going to move into the Swedish Development Agreement. I don't know if we're starting with Mr. Niven or with Lucy because he's making coffee.
Right. So I guess you get me for a little bit. Yeah, exactly. I'll speak really slowly.
Oh, hold on one second. We have a question from the commissioner.
It's more of a statement. In spirit of disclosure, last Monday I began a job with CBRE, and I'm managing group health facilities throughout the Puget Sound. I am in no way involved with any business or financial decisions or anything that would be in conflict here, but because it probably is a competitor, I wanted to bring that up. My role is strictly in managing the properties, the systems, and the technicians that maintain and repair the sites and the subcontractors and vendors. So, and I'm on my 7th day of the job. So,
Thank you, Michael.
So thank you for doing that, and I appreciate Nina clarifying things last time. This is not a quasi-judicial meeting, which means you are not the decision maker. You are making a recommendation tonight. We're hoping. So we have been talking about the Swedish Development Agreement for the last couple of months. We sent a memo with proposed final edits. We'd like to review those in some form with you tonight, and then hopefully have a recommendation to the council going forward. So is there a particular, having looked at the edits, is there a particular way that you would like to go through them? Would you like to go through one by one, or kind of the ones that are more content, or?
Well, you know, I think that there are a bunch of them that are self-explanatory. So if you don't mind, I think I actually would like to go through them one by one, but I think we can sort of go through them quickly. Okay. Are you guys okay with that? And then we'll just, because I don't know who's going to have a question on which ones, I'd rather not, make a decision ahead of time.
Okay.
But I think we can get through them quite quickly. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory.
Yep.
So, okay, everybody? See? All right. Should we ask if there are any other disclosures to be made, however?
Should we congratulate him on his new job?
Oh, congratulations, Michael, on your new job. Yeah. Are there any other disclosures that need to be any other disclosures that need to be made this evening, just while we're there? No? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So why don't we, I'll go up here. So you can see the memos here, and it kind of ties in with the previous page in the handout, which is more about the recommendation. So the first, we're in the main body of the development agreement. The first set of edits is around transit. In A, it was removing the capitals from transit agreement because that's not a defined term, and clarifying that its was the development agreement. Then in B, it was to clarify that it wasn't just new service, but improving existing service would qualify as well. And then also looking at some alternative and supplementary transportation such as taxis and car sharing that might be complementary and encourage less single occupancy vehicle trips.
Just help me with this a little bit. When and especially there's a strikeout on the word of initial investment of 50,000. The agreement has some performance kind of standards, and what if 50,000 doesn't cover it? Then what happens?
Well, I think C addresses that, which says that they would consider further contributions. I think they asked to remove the word initial because it implied inherently that there was something other than an initial one. And that really C is that it needs to be in, further contributions would be in light of the success of the first contribution. Then under the whirlpool, it was clarifying that that the easement for that facility was coming to the city.
Is that Whirlpool as in the corporation or Whirlpool as in the spinning water?
Well, the whirlpool is a stormwater facility, and that's its name is the whirlpool.
Okay.
Would you like to know which stormwater?
No, I don't. I was just question. We're looking at capitalization, and I'm wondering if Whirlpool makes you think of people who make clothes washing machines and whatnot. So.
Is it the one at Upper Reed?
Yes.
So let's. So is it this one right here?
That's where it starts. It's an underground infiltration facility, and it sits right about there.
Under
The mouse won't stay where I'm putting it, but under 10.41 acres. It's a perforated pipe and gravel that's deep underground.
And now, Keith.
Is there any questions?
They would like
Where's the whirlpool facility?
Well, I've got one in my bathroom. No, I'm just kidding. So I
taking
assume.
us backwards.
Just kidding. Sorry.
I think we're done circling the drain on that one, Keith. We can move on.
Woo! All right. So I assume Lucy gave you a little context. This is basically hopefully the final edits to the development agreement. We'll kind of blaze through them. If you guys have any questions, just feel free to stop me along the way.
Can you go back to QD?
Yes.
Actually, and I apologize if this is clear to everybody else, having not been there the last meeting. I'm not sure I understand what that's, which may comprise of one space or multiple usable space. What are we trying to do with that? I know where it's located, but I couldn't find any background information to what that
Okay.
means.
So what this is saying is that within tract QD, they will need to provide a community space. And so that's a requirement that was added as part of the conversations that came out of the Land and Shore Committee.
Okay.
And so the language that we've kind of agreed to here sets an expectation in terms of how big it would be. So the 10,000 square feet is kind of a gauge so that, when this comes in, we'll know kind of about how big of a thing we're talking about. And it may be, so they may make it one 10,000 square foot space, or it might be two 5,000 square foot spaces, or some combination thereof. So we left it open, because what's going to happen is when they bring their their site plan in for the property, they're going to have a plan for track QD because it's part of the project site. And then it's going to either show that that's where they're showing the community space, or we also have left an out that they could provide it somewhere else on the property. Because we haven't seen a site plan for the area, I don't think we want to mandate that it's on QD because that might not be the right space to put a space. So we kind of left it as an out so that good design could prevail if there was a reason not to put it on QD.
So, as a follow-up, there's a definition around community space. We know that.
Yes.
But I can't remember. Is there a minimum square footage? Because
No, and that's why we put the 10,000 square feet here.
well, I guess what I'm wondering is if it's broken up into multiple, can it be 10 1,000 square foot spaces? You know,
That's why we added the word usable.
and I guess that's what I'm wondering is there a minimum usable size space? So
Not defined. So, I think the question is, and it's going to depend on how it's programmed. So, there could be a fairly small and private space that might not be very big at all. But the idea was, so we were relying on the definition of community space, which is one of the reasons why we capitalized community space here, is because it does tie back to the definition. So if we want to look at that, I think part of,
It's further down the page.
well, we could get there if we want to go down and look at that. So I think part of it is using the definition in tandem with this, Jeff. So, I think we had the same concern you did that, what if you had 10,000 1-foot spaces? At what point does it just not work? And so we did put the word usable in. I think if we want to talk about it a little bit more, the value of all of this is it becomes part of the record so that if there's confusion down the road, if we think we got something we really didn't intend, we can go back and watch
well,
this.
I almost feel like I'd be more comfortable, and I've been thinking about this, and I don't know what the right number is, but if we sort of put a maximum on the multiple, so, no more, broken into no more than 3 spaces or 4 spaces or 2 spaces or whatever. I don't know if that's reasonable.
Well, I think we didn't want to do that because we didn't really know how to define what would make sense. I think I understand your concern, which is that, my example was 10,001 square foot spaces.
That wouldn't be very usable.
Yes, not usable.
But a 20 square foot space is usable because
Well-
you could sit on a chair and read a book.
And I think, that's part of the importance of this coming back to the commission. The site development permit will come back, and we'll have this discussion, have they provided a usable community space?
Yeah, can I add, and this did come back to us when we were reviewing the Grand Ridge Plaza permit, where we used to have one big plaza required, and then we got multiple plazas, and some of them are just wide sidewalks with really great places to sit, and I do like them, but having just been part of producing one of the community events and not having a plaza big enough, so we had to take over a parking lot, we had to, and it went really well, it was great. But the reason for the plaza was so that you could have large community gatherings, and then when the language was changed to having a series of plazas, then we've got a little one, and now we don't have a big plaza. I'm not saying we need a big one here, but we're not defining the use.
Well,
Thank you.
I think that's an excellent point, Anna, because the other one that hasn't been built out yet next to Home Goods, next to Home Goods, I guess, or Marshall's. Yeah, I'm really concerned about where that's going to go. And while that's not part of this, because it's probably going to be very usable, but it's not going to be in a place that's very useful. And so I guess that would be my bigger concern is because we broke it up, we gave an opportunity to say, I put X amount of square feet somewhere else, and it satisfies the definition, and it is usable, but it may not be very practical or interesting, so therefore it might not get used very much. So I guess that's my bigger concern.
So I think, I think those are fine points, and I think let's maybe look at the definition of community space. The one thing I wanted to just note as a difference for NINA is This is a community space that's part of Swedish's campus, and those spaces were really community-wide spaces. So it was intended, you know, the things that were integrated into Grand Ridge Plaza were things that were Issaquah Highlands wide, intended for their use. And your comment that maybe what we got at the end of the day is smaller and maybe not as useful as if it would have stayed one big space. I don't doubt that. But we need to kind of keep in mind this is really more for, you know, this office campus and isn't necessarily supposed to accommodate maybe residents who live in South Park, for example. Maybe it does. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what I was, the parallel I wanted to make with that example was to Lucy's referring to then we get the permit application. And so I'm trying to anticipate, well, when we get the permit application, how much authority do we have to say, well, hey, that's not usable enough, or that plaza's not big enough? We didn't have the authority with the Grand Ridge Plaza to say that plaza's not big enough. So maybe this one, what we're trying to say is it usable enough? And I agree with you, Keith, if the community space definition provided just a little more information about what usable means. Yeah, it didn't do it for me either.
So let's let's talk about, so the two words I heard from Jeff. I heard inviting, and I heard practical, but I'm not sure I want to use that word. It's just useful to me. So useful, so usable, useful, and inviting spaces. I mean, I guess the question is, you know, that's one way that I think you could add some additional flavor to this sentence that gives at least a few more breadcrumbs for later, if you wanted to. But that's something that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you look at the definition of community space in this development agreement, the umbrella term within the project designated for lands containing recreation and public amenities such as active, passive parks, plazas, trails, and informal gathering areas, community gardens, and other like facilities and areas. It's pretty broad, right? So it could be 10,000 feet of trails, right?
Yeah.
Which is, you know,
And meet
not
the
saying
definition, except we crossed out trails, but yes.
We took trails.
Oh, we did?
For
Oh.
that very reason.
Yeah, oh, okay.
And informal gathering areas, because I don't
Yeah.
think it's like a little, like 10, 1,000
Right.
pocket parks.
Right, okay.
So one other thing I'd point out, because I think what we all want is that we're going to get something that's meaningful. I'm looking at the guidelines, and maybe it would be useful to put this on.
It's got to be both. Did you get that today?
So I think what I'm looking at here is that, you know, it's an outdoor room with social interaction that creates a sense of belonging, provides variety. It's the cornerstone.
Lucy, the mic.
You're not on the mic.
Thank you.
I'll forward it to you.
It's the cornerstone project character, integral to its organization, often serving as a focal point, assisting in orientation, create meaningful public space and sociable public realm, which invites use. And then I'm wondering if, like, so then to go down a little bit, you know, there's the actual guidelines. So one has to do with buildings, but, you know, they're near high pedestrian volumes, they're multifunctional and make the most of every square foot with flexible programming and activities. Doesn't exclude most users. You know, hopefully framed by buildings. I guess my point is that we have what's in that very first section, which we want to make sure gets us pointed in the right direction. We have the definition, which has eliminated some of the smaller sort of little things that might just eat away at the space without creating something meaningful. And then we have the guidelines. And so the question is, should we add add some additional words in the main body, or do these other pieces that we have begin to fill out the picture?
I mean, I think we have a lot of words, and I think the spirit is there, but Nina makes an excellent point about what our authority is, because if they have something that technically meets the definition, but we don't feel like it's meeting the spirit, then how much authority do we have to change it? Because there have been instances before where they said, where we've heard from the staff, it says, hey, no, it meets the definition, so you can't really change that.
Yeah. I hate to pick on that one litmus test that was just mentioned, so I won't mention its name again, but would it meet all those criteria as a way to look at it, and would it pass that litmus test? Go, you know, it's a usable space, it's useful.
So if there's a spirit piece that you guys want to make sure that you can talk about later, that you don't think is contained here, what would that be? What change would that be? What spirit, what kind of intent, because let's use that word, what intent, whether it's in the definition or in this language here in Track QD, would you guys want to include that's not there now? I think, because I think we're open to talking about adding words, but I want to make sure, because I understand why you want the words. I just need for you guys to tell me what words are you looking for.
I mean, I use the word useful, but I think it's very subjective, because what's useful to me may not be useful to somebody else.
Right.
So that's why I struggle with it.
I mean, I kind of like inviting. You kind of threw that out there maybe unintentionally, because what that does is it makes it clear that it's, you know, at least somewhat open to the public, which has always been the conversation we've talked about, which is, you know, these aren't going to be inside a courtyard in a mass of buildings that nobody can see from any street. You know, there's going to be that intent that there's some other people that can come and use the space as well. You know, I'm not so worried that they're going to provide a bunch of remnant non-usable spaces, because it's part of, it's the amenities. You know, you look at what's around the hospital and the open space that's been included in that plan is really used. I mean, every time I'm up there, and I'm not up there very often, thank goodness. I mean, not to say that your facility isn't awesome. It's just, thank you. But there's people out there. They're sitting on benches. They're walking around the trail. They seem like they're having a good time on the grounds, and that's nice. And so I think, you know, I don't want to say that they've been a good example in the past, so we shouldn't make sure this says what we want it to. But, you know, I think they also have a desire to make these spaces be productive parts of their site plan.
I'm going to try one word. You can tell me if it works, but the one thing that's missing in the Graham Ridge Plaza space is connected. Would that help? Because they use sociable public realm and all those other places, but connected to the entire property or to the...
So when you say that, because I know this is something we've talked about, so I think we should unpack the intent of that. So there's connected to things like the sociable public realm, so that it becomes a part of it. And I know you've also, some of the commissioners have talked about connected as in the open spaces as a series are connected to one another. I think connected in the sense of well, they become a part of the social, they are a sociable public
So,
realm.
Carl, are you wanting
would
it to
think-
be connected to the other Swedish open spaces? Because, I mean, by making them connected, they're bigger than they, you know, the 10,000 square feet becomes bigger as soon as they become connected to the other spaces.
So I'm not trying to say connected to each other to make a
Okay.
continuous or discontinuously joined space, but more connected to the sociable public realm, that it's not off in a corner somewhere, that it feels like it's more part of the entire project.
So,
Because I think that's what we're looking at this other example space, that it's not really connected to the sociable area.
Right, Chantel?
So there's two words that actually stricken over there. The trails and informal gathering places, and what you were describing the rest of and I agree that it's the area around the hospital is very much used, but it is trails.
Yes.
And an informal gathering place can be anything that, that's inviting. I'm not sure why those two are removed and parking in the context of what we're talking here. It seems that they would be applicable to what we're looking for. One word I could suggest is significant, which would kind of go away, move away from the breaking down into little pieces. I don't know, it doesn't quite address the use, or what usable does. Significant space, I don't know.
Well, I think the question is, if you're saying significant, then you're probably saying that they cannot have more than one.
10,000 is, I'd say, more than 500 or
Well-
1,000 or, yeah. It's
I
subjective.
mean, I think if we're trying to give them some flexibility in terms of how it integrates into the plan, significant makes it harder to break it into more pieces.
Tiny little pieces.
If, the reason that trails eat up a lot of square footage, and it's not that trails are bad, but that doesn't create a place for people to gather. And the informal gathering areas,
Create a place for people to gather, but not a place for people to walk.
well, actually,
Getting
they
circular.
often do not create a place for people to gather. They create a place for one or two people to gather. I mean, it would be a bench in a small area, could be an informal gathering area.
It could also be a amphitheater. It could be.
So what if, and again, I'm still trying to, I know what you guys are worried about. You're worried about that the multiple is open-ended. And I think we're all kind of hopefully agreeing that we don't want to say 5, because that might not be the right number, and we don't have a site plan, so we have no idea. So the question is, so I'm going back to this definition, and I guess the question is, designated for lands containing recreation or public amenities such as active or passive parks, plazas, and other like exterior facilities and areas. Does it want to say in there somewhere designed for multiple people or designed for, I think what you're trying to get at is that they're big enough that you could actually call them a space.
Well, I guess, I don't know if the applicant wants to speak, but it seems to me that putting a maximum number isn't out of the realm of possibility, because then it would keep them from having, it wouldn't necessarily keep them from having one small space and one large space, I suppose. You could do 1,000 square feet and 9,000 square feet, so it wouldn't necessarily fix that problem completely, but at least you'd have one big 9,000 square foot spot, right? So, I don't know. I don't know if the applicant has an idea what they're thinking about, because maybe that would help us.
You want to come up, Alex?
So, at this point, we just don't know. I mean, to Lucy's point, we haven't started updating our master use plan. We haven't thought about exactly where building 1 goes to, potential parking structures, where this community space fits in the whole scheme of the donut hole and the greater campus. So, it's hard to say. We can throw out a number, but that may create problems down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just want to reinforce the fact that we want to recreate what we've done. We want to continue what we've done with our existing campus. We have large community spaces on site. In fact, if you look at the guidelines, a lot of pictures that were put in there by Lucy were pictures from our campus. And we want to maintain that feel into the donut hole. So that's important to us, and I guess I'm not sure we're going to be able to address this with specifics in the agreement, other than some, where we talk about usable and the guideline, where the definitions talk about community space. And I guess I hope you guys understand our intent behind what we want to do with the donut hole.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Eric, I know you had something?
Yeah, I just heard the word connected, and I wonder if another word possibly would be accessible. I don't know if that's
Accessible?
something accessible. if that's something we're, might be interested or concerned about.
Yeah, I mean,
But other than,
Okay.
as far as a number or a limit, I don't know if I'd be comfortable with that, because I have no idea what that would be.
Yep.
And I would hope that, the proof is in the pudding. Going up there right now, they have put together a great space. And
Agreed.
I have to sort of go with that too, I think.
Okay. Nina?
Thank you, Jeff. And yeah, my spirit is to tighten up this language for whoever might be fulfilling it.
So I have a suggestion.
I had a
Can
word.
I throw it out there? It might be good, it might be bad, it might not
Had a
even
word.
Hold
satisfy
on,
this, it might
Nina,
open up.
Nina has a word she wanted to throw out there first. Go ahead.
Can I just give him a word? Okay, so I was looking in the definition, and one of the things we're trying to distinguish between is a space that's used for walking through or a place that's occupied. So I thought, why not the word occupied? And if you say it's occupiable by a group of people, that's making that doesn't say what it has to be used to do, but it has a certain size that a group of people, not just two people sitting on a bench, and it's occupiable, you could be there and stay there for your community activity. Anyway, there's
Okay.
something to noodle on.
Isn't there, aren't there legal implications for occupiable space? Are there legal implications for occupiable space? I mean, isn't it kind
Keith,
of
what
a
did
term?
you, what did
I
your,
think you're thinking of
So-
building codes.
Yeah.
So, the one thing that might address the concern that was raised, and we've kind of gone into a rabbit hole, so if we can't solve this, we might want to move on and come back to this at the end, would be if, because I think the issue where we kind of stumbled was if there's multiple spaces. And I think as we think about the worst case scenario, it's multiple little non-usable spaces. And so the question is, what if with the multiple, so they go ahead and they choose that they're going to make multiple spaces instead of a singular space, that there be language here that says multiple complementary spaces. I think, the hope would be if you created multiple spaces, that those spaces would provide different maybe activities or different flavors, so that maybe one day I want to go to the really small quiet space and sit and read my book, but another day I want to go to the space that has the fountain and is in the sunshine. And so, if there was some language in here that said that they had to be complementary or additive, multiple spaces, so that it was clear that they couldn't all be just the side of a building with a bench stuck on it, not that you guys would do that. It at least gets past the first issue that we raised. Now, we kind of raised a bunch of other issues, so I'm not sure that solves the problem. But
Keith, I actually really like that, and I think between what I know Swedish has done already and what the intent is, that idea there, and the third leg of this for me would be the understanding that when the site development permit does come to us, that we have the opportunity to, I don't want to use the word veto, but take issue with if we really have issue with something, and not just say it's it fits the language, therefore it has to be. As long as there's that spirit in place, I'm pretty comfortable with that. The one caveat is, as Nina stated, we're talking about a 20-year agreement, and we don't know who's going to be implementing this, who's bringing the site development permit. It may not be you gentlemen who are going to be in front of us. It may not be us who are sitting here. So I will likely be sitting here, but
you're going to see this through the end.
I am.
Brian, cold.
But you
red
keep pushing
chair.
the end out by decades, not by years.
I know.
You wanna have
but
the
that's
ability-
all I'm trying to say is that I think we just want the flexibility to say, hey, this isn't really what we meant, and even though it fits the letter of the law, please give us some latitude on this.
So you want to have the ability to be able to influence future plans, right?
Because I think we're all saying if we're going forward with this as we're discussing it tonight, then we have a certain expectation, and if that expectation changes but yet still fits within the language, that doesn't necessarily satisfy us
Well,
long term.
To be fair, you're worried that they're going to go crazy. They're going to be worried you're going to go crazy. I mean,
I have gone crazy. I can't go any
know,
further.
I've seen it. But I think the
No,
question.
I understand that.
So, I think that's why you can't completely throw the words away and say that wasn't what we meant. So, I do think it's important to find words.
Well, I think
So I added some words.
yeah, I think that
So
is
multiple
nice.
complementary or very usable spaces.
It should be with an E, but sure. Complementary. Sorry, Dad's an English
Complementary?
teacher. Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Sorry, English is not my first language. Alex, Chuck, is that okay or not? Yes, please.
Another suggestion, and complimentary, I think, makes perfect sense. But I was also hearing that at least there were no objections to what we've done so far. And I guess I'm wondering if there could be maybe just a small phrase that says something like consistent with the theme or spirit
I
of
like
what
that
the
a lot.
original design
Yeah.
was about.
I'd be
Just to
very
make
com-
sure that, we're paying attention to that.
You guys
So-
agree with that?
Similar to those provided around the hospital?
Yeah, consistent with the original concept that we put forth with the.
I'm not going to spell consistent.
Yeah, Keith, I think consistent has more punch to it than similar.
Right, I agree.
I actually like the word consistent better than similar.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Darn it. People.
And then Lucy, I have a question for you and for these guys as well. The plaza inside the Swedish facility, is that considered community space right now?
Well, there wasn't a community space requirement. It wouldn't meet the intent of this
Thank you, Dan.
community space.
Okay.
We don't think it's a bad thing.
I think it's
Just there's-
fantastic, so I'm just saying, to me, it demonstrates that they already take that into consideration when it's not even required, so.
Right. I think that it's the, partly it's the being generally accessible piece, that while we're supportive of that happening again, because it's great in many times of the year, they may not want to make it as available. You need to change the color.
All right, we do need to move on. Is everybody comfortable with where we are on this?
Awesome.
Yes?
Yes. So right now it reads, including development of a new community space of approximately 10,000 square feet, which may be comprised of one space or multiple complementary or varied usable spaces consistent with those provided around the hospital, subject to your private restrictions.
Put a comma after varied, would you?
We can do that.
Around the current.
Those currently
How about
provided.
if it's around the existing facilities? Because it's not just the hospital, it's an MOB, and it's more.
I like it.
Groovy.
Okay.
All right, guys, we're moving
All
along.
right, move on.
Section 3. So this is just clarity. In some cases, we called Appendix D processing. In some cases, we called it permitting. So this is just getting us square. In section, and same thing in Section 4. Sometimes we call it urban design guidelines, sometimes design guidelines. So we're just making consistency. Section 5, we didn't include square feet after 538,000, so we figured we should probably put a measure in. Consistency issues. So now we're down to the definitions. So build out period, just to be clear, because it kind of said some different things in different places of the agreement, we're talking about a 20-year period which ends 31 December 2033. Okay. We talked about community spaces. So now we can talk about why we struck these things out. I think because we have the 10,000 square feet, as Lucy mentioned earlier, one of the things we found in Tallis was, because there was an obligation for a certain amount of square footage per residence, and once you start using trails, it really does take all the square footage up. And not that the trails are bad in Tallis, but that's why you didn't have more little pocket parks, is because they all went to trails. So I think we just learned our lesson there. Floor area ratio, we added this language at the end. So the idea is, so there's a minimum floor area ratio in Appendix C land use, and it's 0.75. And what this is intended to be clear on is that as they build out, they're not going to reach that 0.75 till they basically build all their square footage. They're going to be under. And so this recognizes that they're not going to build all 538,000 square feet in one phase. Most likely. They might, but most likely not. Under retail, we changed commercial to just allowed uses because some of them seemed like they weren't quite commercial. The next one, we changed it from PED bridge to sky bridge. We've got design guidelines for sky bridges. We kind of started at PED bridges, and then we eventually moved over to sky bridges, and this was just a hanger-oner. And then this last, the designated official. So this was one of the things that was brought up by one of our council members, and I think all it is intended to say is that, and Lucy, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the mayor might actually assign multiple designated officials. So for example, on land use, it might be Lucy doing development services stuff, but for maybe water and sewer, it might be the public works engineering director. So that's all that's intended to say. Appendix B, which is design guidelines
Keith?
apparently, and not urban design guidelines.
Hate
Yes?
to wordsmith, but should it say then specific portions of this agreement so that it doesn't look like we're only looking at part of the agreement?
I'm fine with that. You know, I love that about you guys.
I did.
Okay, so now in Appendix B,
liked it.
design guidelines, we clarified dusk to dawn, since at different times of the year, dusk to dawn has a very different range. So, yeah, basically. And then 337 is some new language based on the conversation we had about, I think, light throw from the sky bridges and how that could be an issue. So we put some language in here about kind of an expectation of how they'll be designed to minimize kind of the light throw when it's not needed. And then this stuff in C. So we had pharmacy twice, which is why pharmacy got struck in this first kind of group here under V. And then prohibited uses. So this was language, you know, one of the things that we tried to do was to not give away anything that we had in Issaquah Highlands when we did this new development agreement. It really was not intending to get rid of any of the things in there that were protections. And this language was in the existing Issaquah Highlands development agreement related to kind of hazardous materials like dry cleaning, chemicals, and stuff like that. And so, you know, because we had really not intended to omit it with this new development agreement, we just basically added it in.
Keith, I have a question
Yes.
about that. So there are hazardous chemicals that are required for the regular operation of a building that aren't medically specific,
Yes.
like cleaning supplies?
So we did monkey with the language a little bit. So you can see, Michael, if you read it, it says, blah, blah, blah. The storage of hazardous materials shall be restricted on the property to those necessary for medical purposes, so long as the hazardous materials and or chemicals are stored interior to occupied structures. So that language wasn't in the Highlands Agreement because they didn't know they were going to have a hospital. But so we kind of worked with Swedish to get some language that still, I think, brought forward the flavor of what was in the Highlands Agreement, which is we don't want a bunch of hazardous materials out there, but we do recognize that a hospital is going to have a certain amount of hazardous materials just because of the land use. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It kind of does, but if these buildings are not all for medical purposes, does it exclude any sort of chemical storage there that may be necessary for day-to-day facilities maintenance?
Well, I think the important part has to do with the unprotected site soils and surface waters, because that's what's driving this. So in, for instance, you know, when we've had pools, we've had to allow chlorine, and it's a question of where it's stored. And so it just, sorry, involves a somewhat higher level of review as to where those materials are stored on site to keep them from the soils and the surface waters.
But I guess what you're asking though is, this doesn't really address the day-to-day stuff.
So if the pharmacy is not owned by Swedish, if they, contract it out to Bartels or whatnot, could they store a bunch of chemicals on site? They could, I think. I think what Lucy's point is, if they wanted to do it inside the building, it'd probably be allowed. If they wanted to do it outside under like a cover, that's starting to get into the margin. And I think that would be the same with anybody. So if
Yeah,
there
I mean,
was,
'cause
there was a restaurant up there, for example, and they can't really do a lot of freestanding stuff, but let's assume they had a restaurant tied to one of the medical office buildings. If they had some chemical materials that they wanted to store, it would have to be inside the building, I think is what this would say.
Okay.
It wouldn't, I don't think it would be that they couldn't have it. I think that it would need to be inside the building.
Okay, that makes sense.
Are we certain they're not going to have livestock for commercial purposes? That's okay. It's not in your plan. Okay.
Although it might
Why
be,
we struck community gardens.
although it
Yes,
might be
it's only-
sustainable. All right, so 4.5 again, at full build out is relating to, the idea that it might be phased or happen in phases.
Keith,
Yeah,
can I, you mentioned you've got full build out a couple of times and you're capitalizing build out. You've got build out period in the definitions. Is build out defined somewhere else, or, I mean, what's full build out exactly?
is build out defined, is a defined term or no?
Build out period is.
Oh.
So maybe it needs to say at the end of the full build-out period.
Where, Carl?
Under floor area ratio definition.
Is that in the memo or not?
Yes.
Phew. I didn't want to have to add something new to the memo.
Oh, yep.
Calculated,
At the end of the full build-out period.
calculated at the end of the build out period.
Then you build it out, and at that point you can't calculate it, you won't go backwards.
Well, part of your question is also, is there a definition for build out or is it build out period?
Well, so I think Alex is right. So I think it's calculated, yeah,
Or
I mean,
what the full build-out period is going to
it's-
be.
It's calculated at the use of the full entitlement is what it is. So so what we're saying is the 538,000 square feet of new, it goes into. Okay, so I'm going to say, so we're going to kind of monkey with this a little bit.
Why don't you just leave it the way it was and define full build out?
It is.
'Cause I
full
don't think it
build-out
is.
defined.
Where?
A build-out period is
Yeah.
defined.
So calculated with the land use permit, because I think you need to identify when you're calculating it. Permit based on use of, is entitlement like a word? I don't want to make new.
It's like a word.
You want to make new definition.
I don't think so.
Land use.
The only reason I'm saying use define full build out is because when you have it in multiple places, if you don't change it exactly to be exactly the same in multiple places, then you have an integrity issue.
Yeah,
So,
and I'm trying to avoid that actually.
well, then define it.
Too late. Just kidding.
I'm going to put it as defined under section 5 project elements, because that's where it gives all those numbers. Based on the allowed Development. Section 5, which is called project elements. Okay. Thank you for that. And I'll go down and change it down here too. Yes, thank you. Because I'm kind of a slow typer, as you can tell. Blame it on being left-handed. Ah. Give me formatting. Oh. All right. Assume I can fix that.
So the other thing,
Yes.
no, just for their information. So my calculation is that if they built all the square footage that they're entitled to build, they'd have an FAR of 0.87. So that's a cushion of maybe 150,000 square feet.
And the way this plays out for you guys is when they bring in their land use plan for the donut hole, and they may include the rest of their phase one property, that's when you do the calculation. And if it doesn't meet the FAR, I think it would be the opportunity where you guys could say you need more buildings.
Or floors.
Or floors. Is that a surprise for you? Shouldn't be.
So I just want to clarify, I want to make sure that when we're talking about coming into first permitting, let's say we're going to build 150,000 square feet. At that point, we will not meet the 0.75 FAR.
But your master plan will.
But the master plan will.
That's what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
That's what I was talking about.
Okay, and is that clear, that we're talking about
I think so.
the master plan, or you're
Well,
talking about?
That's
It's-
your land use permit.
That's your land use permit, and then the land use permit should show how you're going to get to 0.75.
Okay,
Yeah.
And then
You can even show
you're going to
future
build it,
buildings.
you're going to build it incrementally
yes,
towards that.
okay, makes sense. I have one more comment on a different section, so let's finish this.
So it's pre-calculated. I mean.
At
they-
land use, we're going to
Right.
confirm that they have a plan to get
Right,
there.
okay, cool.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
That's what I was looking for.
And go ahead.
Okay. To Michael's point about 3.3, I am a little nervous about this, the medical, just saying medical, because we have retail, we have other uses. Can we add in something that says medical and/or other allowable uses per section, appendix C?
What about the word operational uses? I mean, I was considering this, every facility up there, all the retail, they have on-site chemical storage to maintain operations.
Cleaning supplies, it would probably be hazardous.
Yeah, they have
right?
all got MSDS sheets, so they're hazardous. It's science.
Well, okay, what if, and don't freak out, okay? I would just take out for medical purposes and just say to those necessary so long as they're hazard, they're stored, properly stored.
Done.
Wow.
I like taking stuff out. We can do that all night long. All right.
Our new hero.
Are you okay with that?
I mean, people can debate what's necessary.
Well, they can debate medical purposes too.
Right.
So I'm moving along, 4.6. So we added within 3 years. So what this is, so non-conforming, so part of this, and the best example is we've changed some of the parking standards in this agreement from what was in the Highlands agreement. And I'll just use motorcycle parking as my favorite example. So right now what this says is if you go in and you tinker with the existing parking lot and you don't hit the 50%, you don't have to now all of a sudden add motorcycle parking. And what this language is intending to do is to basically say that they can't do a bunch of little revisions over time, that within a 3-year period we're going to aggregate any minor revisions together to say, okay, how much did you really change over a 3-year period? So this is just keeping, it's keeping at least track for a certain time period, that if they did a bunch of smaller revisions, at some point a bunch of small revisions are a big revision. So,
And the 3 years comes from this, that's what was used in the central Issaquah plan.
okay. So I'm on to Appendix D, which I can't even remember what it is.
Processing, I think.
Processing, okay. So 2.3, we changed this from Master Association to High Street Association. That was, I think, a logistic thing that Port Blakely clarified for us.
I'm sorry,
Yes?
isn't Appendix D permitting based on our last revision?
Clearly, I'm not the one to be keeping track of what they're called.
I am paying attention. Okay.
So first revision, the High Street Association is the group that is going to be overseeing this property. Looks like we did some little numerical changes, and then we got down to 4.3. We don't have administrative site development permits in this development agreement. We just have site development permits. And then the designated official has the authority to select the appropriate electronic format in which these are submitted. That's all just kind of processing city bureaucracy stuff. I hope you don't care about that.
I do have one question. I just don't know what these are, which these are submitted. What are those, the permits?
The permits.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then we actually, we added another bullet point to the end of this section, 6.3, which says changes to transportation improvements and trip generation table.
These are things that can't be changed without it going back to council.
Yeah, so that becomes a major mod. Appendix E, which is circulation. No major changes to text. We just changed pedestrian bridge to sky bridge again in 5.9. But then there's a bunch of new graphics. So as we talked about before, the graphics for the different street types didn't match the descriptions or the dimensions. And so we've hopefully fixed all those, and we can do those when we get to the end, if you want, unless Scott wants to talk about them now.
Just a quick call out. Is it complements and not contemplates?
Where are you?
4.4.
Master drainage plan.
And provide a design that contemplates required facilities?
We are very contemplative.
Oh, you jumped ahead.
He's ready.
Sorry.
Contemplates. Design that. Is that your words?
No, that's probably my words.
That's not mine.
Dan's awake.
No, well,
Oh!
provides a design that contemplates required facilities. So I think that what that's trying to say is that you need to think about the big picture if you're doing it piecemeal.
So if you look under 4.1, actually, those are your words, Mr. Smarty Pants. 4.1, so there was two places we talked about master drainage plan. Seemed like they should be consolidated into one location. So the language in 4.1 that seemed not to be covered in 4.4 got picked up and put into that place saying contemplating. We work for the NSA, yeah.
All right, down to underground storage tanks. The idea is, so to give you guys some background, the city council modified the Highlands Development Agreement to allow underground storage tanks for the hospital. And what we're talking about here is the ability for them to add an additional 50,000, not to exceed a total of 100,000 gallons for the property. So the idea is, if there's a need for additional underground storage tanks, that they're allowed within a certain range and not just loose.
I'm just curious, CARA 1 and CARA 2, should they both be capitalized, or is that an acronym, or is that a name?
It is. Thank you.
Okay.
It stands for Critical Aquifer Recharge Area, for those of you watching at home. All right. 4.5.2.3, master developer, the results of the inventory program shall be delivered to the city upon request, but no less frequently than one time per year. So what this is basically saying is there's an obligation for them to monitor the underground storage tanks for leaks. And we initially had language in here that said they had to periodically deliver that information to the city. And I think the comment that we got was, like, what does that mean? So, so we put something a little bit more measurable and predictable here.
And forgive me, I don't want to get into too much in the weeds here, but do people know what that means and to whom in the city, or do you just drop it off at City Hall and hope somebody reads it? Or?
It actually is our public works operations folks. So,
Do they know that? Is that defined somewhere? I mean, I don't know.
did you want that clarified? Yeah, I don't want it.
Should it say it's received?
I'm just picturing like a baby being dropped on the fire station doorstep.
That happens daily.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't actually. It doesn't matter to me as long as somebody understands what that means.
I think we're going to be good with it the way it is.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you. So Appendix G's parking. I
have a question here.
Yes. Back on whatever's before G or G?
No, G.
Okay.
In the table.
Yes.
The third row. Something wrong with my math brain. The assisted and independent living rehab nursing row. Do the 2 spaces per 1,000 NSF? Does that go? Is that right with 1 per 3? For some reason, the math just didn't seem right.
So here's.
So it's a tomato and a kumquat.
Yes, it is a tomato and a kumquat. Most of the development agreement, and this happened starting back at Raleigh, that the minimum was based on a net square footage. And the reason that the guest housing got changed is that we had to go back and fix that for Raleigh because we had some additional information that told us that as a minimum 2 per 1,000 wasn't minimum, it was actually more. For this one, we don't have a number to change it to in terms of 1 per 1.5 beds or something. And so if that was a problem, we would fix that administratively in the future.
What I was trying to figure out was if 2 spaces per 1,000 net square feet is a minimum, but only 1 per 3 beds is a maximum, and I'm trying to think about
Right. It's not a closed set.
Yeah, there's nothing
Right.
in between those two. In fact, this one seems to be less than the maximum seems to be less than the minimum. That was the problem I was having.
So, and you might be right, and I think, and the question I would pose to Lucy, because I already asked this question once, and I got that same junky answer that we did it in Raleigh, so it must be right, which I still am not buying. So I think the question is what I heard her say is if these numbers are not right, then we basically look to the applicant to tell us how many they think they need to have, and they provide the information to support that. And I guess the question is if that's the process we're going to use to determine the appropriate number of parking spaces, maybe we should just say that here. But I don't want to tip over any apple carts because this isn't even my department anymore. So I don't know how you guys feel other than I think you identified what I did, Nina, which is I don't even know.
If there's going to be a table, I think that the maximum should be larger than the minimum. That's all I'm saying.
And it might be. I mean,
Building.
Of the building?
So
I don't know how it could be. I don't know how it could be larger. Then
well, it depends on how much square footage you put towards the beds.
put towards what?
The beds.
Or how big the beds are.
They're king-size beds.
That would mean the room for each bed is 330 square feet. And that,
Okay.
then that seems like,
That's possible, certainly.
so I think that math works.
So I was,
Well, no, but that would be the maximum. So if you still have 1,000 square feet, so you'd have to put 2 spaces on the minimum, but only 1 space on the maximum with the same math, right? If you
Yeah,
have
so
3
that
beds
math-
at 330,
You're
that's
20.
1,000 square feet. The minimum says 2 spaces, the maximum says 1 space. That doesn't seem to match. Am I right?
Yeah, at that math, the minimum is 20 beds for a 10,000 square foot facility, and
So-
the max is
So-
9.
Consistent with the units.
So it doesn't work.
Well, I mean, are we seeing this incorrectly or what? I'm not sure.
We aren't pretending that this is the right answer. We just don't have any research to say what the right answer is.
Right, but if
Everything
you're
is,
gonna make it up,
everything,
it should-
everything is,
If you're going to make it up, the minimum should be smaller than the maximum, I think is what we're saying.
So would you guys be opposed to us striking both of these and just putting?
I would not strike the maximum, but we can strike the minimum and say it would be based on a parking analysis. Yes, study.
Would you guys be okay with striking one of these and saying based on a parking study? Anything less than 1 space per 3 beds?
sure.
Okay, let's do that. I like that better than what we got now.
Right. The reason this popped up in my mind is 1 per 3 beds when we're talking about independent living, is that these aren't just hospital beds sitting in a little room with a curtain around it.
Right.
This is with a little kitchen and a sofa and visitors and somebody who lives there who needs a little extra help. So 1 per 3 beds, it triggered in my mind that that's not quite enough. So to hang on that as the absolute thing to keep would not be where I would be heading.
I would have no basis for doing anything higher than that. I mean, that's what's in, all of the maximums came from Issaquah Highlands. I assume that's the same thing that's in Tallis. Yeah.
But I think if you went to an equivalent to a 1-bedroom apartment, say.
I think you're
Well, bed,
much less
bedroom or
likely to
sleeping
have
room.
drivers here than you would with a 1-bedroom.
Even at
apartment.
independent living?
Yeah. That's what we hear at Timber Ridge.
If I may, I just think we should be consistent with the terminology, or the
That's what I
units.
was saying.
You know, instead of 1 per sleeping room, 3 beds, you know, nautical square feet.
Non-sufficient funds.
It should be, I know I made an incorrect statement, but it should just all be the same units.
I understand why you say that, Eric, but we
Yeah.
don't have the information to make it the same
Right.
units. That's why.
But we also have different, so is a sleeping room the same as a bedroom? Because in the next section, 3.4a, we're talking about bedrooms. So it's rooms that became bedrooms, and then above we have sleeping rooms, and then we have beds.
Yeah. Is this April 1st? First time. Determined by party.
Is there a suggestion?
We're just
If-
trying.
if so, I was typing,
Here's the
so-
suggestion that I'm hearing.
Yes.
Can we be Can we be consistent
So,
on the units? Is that possible given the different, land use types?
I can't. I don't have any, I'd just be making up a number.
Well, we're making it up now, but at least be consistent in the
No, we're not making it up now. I'm not saying it's the right thing, but it is not made up. So I would be making anything up, so I would say, let's put in that it's based on a parking study, and we can pick bedrooms or sleeping rooms, I don't care.
Right, then, okay, so everything is based on a parking study, we're not leaving the maximum as is?
Yes, you would leave the maximum in, because that actually is based on something. I mean, if you want to take it out, you
No,
can.
I'm just confused. I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm just looking at sleeping rooms and then beds and then rentable or bedrooms. So I just don't know what I'm looking at. So not sure what I'm recommending if I don't know what I'm looking at. And maybe, am I the only one that doesn't know what they're looking at? Or? Yeah, I don't know. I don't have an issue with the numbers necessarily. I just don't know what I'm looking at.
I mean, I think, so I hear what you guys are saying, and I understand the issue, and I think one answer could be this isn't unusual for planners to do things this way. Now, it doesn't make it right, it just means that that might be the case. But I think if you wanted common nomenclature, you could potentially change it all to resident, okay? Because I think no matter what,
How would we know residents at land use?
because they're going to know it's a business. So it's not like you have a family of 12. You have one resident that is basically like a patient in any of those situations.
No, because you could have two people in a
sleeping room,
unit
yes.
with independent living, and you wouldn't know whether a unit was going to have one or two.
So the independent living is the one that's messing us up. And
Well, and guest housing.
And sleeping room, and bedroom, and beds.
Well, I think I get it now because it is per land use. Each use is different, and so the measurements are different.
so, and I think we're on a
understand that.
slippery slope if we're going to try and combine this
So I think
together
to
into
support
one thing.
Lucy, it's already been established.
So I think we take our win here and we run.
I don't think I'm going to get any more clarity, so let's move on. I don't understand it, so. Okay.
So, can we go down to 4.5C, which is transit access, buildings with primary pedestrian entrance? We struck that out. I think it's because this was for Lakeside. Was that true, Lucy?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're farther away than 1,300 feet from the park and ride garage. So that's why we took it out. 4.5D1, which is off-site shared parking. And I'm just going to say, Lucy, just you want to do this because you understand this more than I do.
Right. So off-site shared parking would be if, for instance, ProLiance decided to share parking with Swedish. They're two separate projects. There had been some confusion about where a contract was required. And if you have Swedish, is going to own all this property, and people would be subcontractors to them, and it says that in one of the definitions. So they don't need a contract within the project unless they sell it. But if you're doing it off-site, you need a contract that actually ensures that both parties who have committed to sharing parking do so under certain rules so that that parking is actually available. So we added the standard shared parking contract provisions.
Did you say ProLiance did agree?
No, if.
If they did agree. Okay, thank you.
So my question with this, and maybe that I'm reading this wrong, but I tried reading several times, is so once the contract is in place, it's for the life of the 30-year agreement, or it can never be encroached? So if the use of the building change, if all of a sudden there's no more cars, we cannot get rid of the parking at any point, or did I misunderstand?
Well,
that?
is it the contract changes section you're pointing to, Chantal?
Yeah, 4.5 E4D, and then the little I.
Well, it does say that it can be terminated. It just basically is saying that it can't be terminated unless the city has an opportunity to review and agree to that.
I think, Chantal, maybe you're not getting to the bottom 4.5E, 4E,
Right,
EIEIO.
Yeah.
The contract changes part. I see that. So the contract is enacted, and then someone decides to change it. The city has to review it to make sure that it's not.
So the purpose of this is if we've approved a land use permit that relies on shared parking, that it can't be terminated by the two parties without the city understanding how parking is going to be accommodated. So if your scenario, Chantal, comes out where all of a sudden Swedish is paying for a transit service directly to the hospital, and therefore they can remove some of their parking obligation. The question that you raised is, well, now are they stuck with this parking contract, which encumbers part of their property for a parking lot? I think what we would say is it does until they change it, and that the city would have to be at least included in that revision to the parking contract. The idea and the reason why there's kind of this much legalness associated with it is, what we don't want to have happen is for, let's just say, Pro Alliance relying on, say, 50 parking spaces on the Swedish site, and then all of a sudden Swedish saying, well, yeah, but we really would like to build, phase 4 right where that parking lot is, and then Pro Alliance doesn't have enough parking spaces. So I think what this is really trying to do is just make sure that if we do allow for that sharing, that there's at least some contractual obligations that doesn't leave somebody hanging out in the wind later.
You okay with that? Okay, great, thank you. Can I say something about 46A3? I'm sorry.
No, that should be EG.
EG, yeah. Keith, on,
Sorry, yes.
sorry, do you want to share that with the class?
So right now, the mayoral election, is anybody interested?
Oh, okay.
What?
Come back to life.
46A3.
Yes?
Can you just put EG under, after car sharing? So, for example, zip car and car to go.
Up, right.
Oh, yeah.
Things may change by
You don't
2033.
want to just limit it to
Those
that?
are on, can't use any
Yeah,
others.
thank you. Yeah, want to share?
So at this time, current count, I assume you guys really want to know. Fred Butler is ahead of Joe Faulkner.
How many ballots?
I don't know. Do you see how many ballots? Yeah, probably 3% for reporting. I don't know. So it's 75 to 25 right now.
Wonder if they count.
So, okay. Back to business. We got to get through this, you guys. So 46A, Lucy, you want to describe what this amendment does?
Oh, this was what I was talking about a moment ago, that because the district shared parking, we've done an agreement that covers all the project in the past, and Swedish asked not to do that because they said as the single property owner, that would be the way it would have to operate. They would be doing that anyway. But that they agreed that if it was sold to another entity separate from Swedish or Providence, that that kind of agreement would be necessary, but not until that time.
Does that include only on-site parking or street parking as well?
I think it's all the parking.
All the parking. So east side of 8th, west side of 8th Avenue, if that's included. Just a quick question. I'm confused. 4.6.A.3 is above 4.6.A. Just formatting, just curious about that. Okay, we won't finger point. Okay, so do you guys have any questions? Yes, go ahead, Nina.
Actually, you know why it does that? Okay.
No.
I actually did figure it out. That there's, after the numbers, that's 46A3, there's a paragraph that doesn't have a number. It's just a paragraph that's under section 4.6. So it does, in order, come after that, even though it, in this numerical sense, doesn't make sense.
Okay, I regret that I asked the question.
You?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but thank you.
But I-
Go ahead, Nina.
Okay, my question about the big 4.6.A. I understand that logic. Lucy, I would too say that. But I wondered, because the development agreement isn't really with Swedish, except they're the signing party now, it's with a piece of land, and we try to remember. And I think that this shows that if the land changed hands, that then you would implement this, or if part of it did. So I appreciate that. But it still made more sense to me, because the development agreement is on the land, to have it in place now. Why not have it in place now? And if we couldn't get that, I thought that an edit was necessary where it says on about the third line, with the sale of all or portion, that it should also say or lease, perhaps, because then it's no longer a single entity
Right, but they're still in control of the property.
in control of it. Yeah, it's just because there's a development agreement on all the land. Why put off doing the district shared parking agreement until later?
I think, Alex, you got to talk to this because you're the one that's passionate about it.
Well, I guess I'll just go ahead. I mean, he beat on me long enough. I can share maybe some vision. I think, part of it is I don't think anybody wants to put a legal contract on a piece of property unless they have to. So even though it may seem like the right thing to do to just go ahead and take care of this, I think their perspective is they don't necessarily see this happening. And so to draft a restrictive covenant and record it on the property just in case seems like something that they shouldn't have to do. But that's my recollection. But
Well,
Right.
And let me just add.
Here's what I will say,
Okay.
in full disclosure, Regency's done it and Rowley's done it. So we agreed to this because I don't think that's an unreasonable position, but I don't think recording one is unreasonable either.
And it's-
I don't think it's necessary at this point, but we have them
Okay.
under what seem to me to be similar circumstances.
And it's not a just in case. It's a major tenet of the way that the parking is planned. That it is a district parking, one park for all uses in the property. And so it's not a just in case it becomes a problem. It's a big definition of how parking works.
Which is why we added some language.
But this only comes into play, Nina, if they choose to enter into a shared parking agreement with some other entity. And I don't think that they expect they're going to do that. I think
We frankly have no intention of doing it anytime soon. I don't know if we ever will.
And that's why I added the language. You'll see, if you go back to page 6, 1.1E, that I added that up front, including project-wide shared parking, because I wanted to be very clear up front that that was the expectation.
So the philosophical piece of this, the fact that you can park somewhere in the donut hole and you can walk maybe through a promenade or through a sky bridge over to the hospital and go down to the Starbucks and get your coffee and eat at the cafeteria and maybe walk around the trail, and you don't have to take your car and cross the street, they're not fighting that issue. And I think that idea that that they're making a walkable campus is something that clearly is represented in the design guidelines. I think all this is saying is if they choose to not enter into a shared parking agreement because, the guest housing that they provide is ultimately managed by Swedish and owned by Swedish or some entity thereof, they don't need to do that because they have their own business contractual relationships. I think all this is saying is if they don't go there, they don't have to do the covenant on the property. But if they do, if they choose to do the shared parking agreement, then they have to do that. So I think it is adjusting. I don't know that they're going to do, again, I'm not sure what you gain by making them do that at the outset, other than it's another legal hoop for them to jump through. And I think their lawyers had some issues with it. Although he's not here tonight. If he knew we were going to talk about this, he probably would have driven up from Portland just to tell you how much that bothers him. So I don't know. I mean,
I guess I'm saying is it important later then? So is this kind of dissolving the importance of it at all? Why would another party have to have it? Why is it important at all?
Well, let's say that for assisted living, we decide to contract with an entirely different company, where they either own or lease a building. That's a different story. Now we actually have to have, I think it's the right thing to have a shared parking agreement. But if it's an agreement with ourselves, I guess, what value does that bring for us or you guys in terms of, other than an administrative headache of putting together the agreement?
Does the word lease need to be added to that line then? Is that helpful? I'm asking.
Where are you referring?
Third line down with sale or lease of all or portion, because that's what he was just saying.
third line down, am I not?
Third line of the red line.
Oh, thank you.
But lease in terms of what? Are you talking about a small clinic or cafe, which is, I think, a different story than a sizable chunk of the property, which I think is what you're getting to.
I guess my thought is that if they're leasing it, they can set the terms of the lease. But with the sale, I mean, you could set the terms, but the only way to really establish that is through that agreement. Because once you've sold the property, those kinds of restrictions, I mean, those kinds of maybe more informal agreements could be in jeopardy.
So Nina, you okay? All right, I'm gonna move on.
All the rest of that is just numbering.
Okay. So Appendix H is landscaping. So 5.1D, we added some clarification on root barriers, and the extent of the root barriers will be, I guess, subjective based on the trees selected and the designated official's very expertise opinion. 7, a variety of deciduous and conifer trees shall be used, allowing for shading in the summer and light during the winter months. Was struck. Tell me if you want me to stop. 10.3, we added some language about the BMPs, the best management practices associated with the applications of fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides. I think this was in response to some of the issues you guys wanted some clarification on. Okay, Appendix I, signs. It's got to be signs. So I tend to keep forgetting to add the political signs back in. I'm not sure why. So we need to put them back in. It was unintentional that they were deleted. So we're putting those back in. We added back in rental or leasing office signs because there could be some space that they need to be able to advertise as available. We deleted this 9.4B, this right of entry. I think our opinion is that it would be hard to enforce this provision, so it was best to just take it out. And that's pretty much it on signs. So J's got to be, what, lighting?
Yes.
Okay. Lucy, are any of these worth discussing?
Well, actually, 2.3.15 should be removed.
What do you mean by remove? So delete this whole thing?
Yeah, because we.
Oh, right. So we already talked about the dusk to dawn.
Yep.
All right.
So the 2.2 is to clarify that both street and exposed parking would have a U value of 0, which is essentially a full cutoff fixture. Wooner is called a character street in here, and the same with 2.3.10 was to clarify that the U value was 0. That was some edits that we had. They just got lost in the translation.
All right, so Appendix K was sustainability, and we added some language. I think, Chantal, you weren't here last time, and I think this was in response to one of the comments you had made. So, and I think part of it, and hopefully we understood the intent of your comment, but I think what we heard was that sustainability is really more of a holistic thing, and this appendix really kind of focused on one part of it. And so just acknowledging that, and so hopefully the language that we added helps with that. So we added kind of a description on why it was focused on kind of one part and not the other two parts. So that's what this language was intending to do. I don't know if it's good or bad. So. And then I'm just going to keep going unless you guys want me to stop. So in 3.4.2, there was some conversation about not the way that it read. I think it was concerned. There was some concern expressed that they could take credit for the hospital, because I think there was an acknowledgement in this room that they did a really great job on the hospital, and it's very much an innovative and cutting-edge facility. And I think the idea was that really that was great, but the way that the appendix read, that there could be the ability for them to say, well, we did this in phase 1 with the hospital, and therefore give us credit for it. The innovation's been done. And so this was kind of clarifying that this is really about the new 538,000 square feet and not the existing hospital. And then in 3.5, apparently we needed to spell out TMP and CTR, so we did. We added some language in 4.1, which was to be mutually agreed by the parties. So if certain measures have become commonplace, and this was, I think, a comment that, you know, because this is a long-term development agreement, some of the things in our list might in 10 years be old hat. And so there's the ability for the parties to say, yeah, you know what, those are old hat and not innovative at this point. So we added some language there. And then we have a property map. So this is figure 1 in the main body. And then we have a legal description, which is figure 2 of the main body. And then a new attachment 4, which is all the math associated with the traffic calculations. So this seemed really important since there was a limiting factor on the amount of medical office building based on traffic, that we have documented how we got to the traffic limitation. So if 5 years from now they want more medical office space, they would need to show us how they didn't exceed the trips.
Just out of curiosity, does this change the thinking from Swedish, or any concerns there, that any surprises? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And then as mentioned earlier, we updated, I'm not sure if it's all the exhibits in Appendix E, but if not most of them, to all but one, to make them the dimensions consistent with the descriptions in the text. So apologize that that didn't happen earlier. We just kind of missed that part. So, oh, and a new bug exhibit, because I know you guys wanted one. So, I have no idea about this, although I've been told by Dan that this one makes way more sense. So I'm just going to say, okay. All right, so that's the story, gang. I think at this point we've been through the memo. So if you guys want to talk about any pieces, either in the memo or not in the memo, now's the time to do that.
Okay, well, I think at this time, before we start the discussion, I'd like to see if there's anybody from the public that would like to speak, if you're okay with that, and then we can discuss. So I would like to open up public comment at 8:38. Is there anybody who would like to speak? It looks like there's nobody who would like to speak, so we're going to go ahead and close public comment of this portion of this meeting at 8:38 and 10 seconds. Yeah, nothing? Okay. So, open discussion, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I think we've gone through this in great detail, in multiple phases, but I want to take this opportunity to ask if anybody has anything to bring up that hasn't been discussed, that has been discussed but you're not satisfied with, that needs clarification, or anything else before we go into a recommendation phase. Anyone? Nothing? Okay. Well, I guess I don't have anything either at this point. Oh, hold on. Since we had 8:40, do I need to open it up? I think I should.
Do you want to give public comment?
8:40 was the time. We got there a minute early, but I'm going to reopen it since you walked in the door. You're on time. You're on time. You're not being penalized. So at this time, we're going to reopen the public comment section at 8:39.
This is actually how I like to get on an airplane, too. It's like you walk in, you go in, you sit down. Let me arm my phone, though. My name's Connie Marsh. Do you have, I'll tell them everybody again. I have a store at 1175 Northwest Gilman Boulevard, and Halloween is over. Thank goodness. Okay, so I don't know if you guys got the email that I sent about the master drainage plan. I don't know if they got that forwarded. Did you guys get that email?
Yes.
Okay. Did you guys get that email?
Yeah, no, we looked at that last time.
No, this was a new one.
When did you send that?
I don't know, last week. Okay, anyway, so I'll say it again. I thought when we talked about the master drainage plan that they had said they were going to add some earlier or public visibility to when the master drainage plan came out. And I didn't see that reflected in this development agreement language change. And because we have no idea what they're going to do and some of the things that they might do, I think could be important for people to understand that it's happening when it's happening, to comment on, like me. Because you guys don't care that much about master drainage. I care a lot about it. And if I can't ever see it, then I can't comment. And so unless it comes out in the public in a meeting, I would never know it's happening. Unless I call Dan daily or email him daily, right? And I know you'll love me, Dan, but really, right? So I would like to have that sort of carried through because I thought that was a commitment last time. And then the next thing is the fuel storage. So the reason that the hospital got the fuel storage is you can see it, right? Something happens, all the electricity goes out, you have people in the hospital that need to survive, right? But in this, I don't see that you have a lot of occupied beds. So I don't really understand why you would need all the fuel storage for this. This is not really an essential public facility. The hospital is, but this is sort of a medical office or housing situation. So I would like something put in there saying that if indeed there are these hospital occupied beds in there, then they would get the fuel storage. But if it's just medical use building and some assisted living or independent living, that they don't need 100,000 gallons of fuel storage right up above, well, never mind, in that area. And I would like that condition put in there, saying that it's just not they get to do it whatever. And then in the sustainability section, environmental sustainability, in their very tight thing, they talk about when we build, then we have to show environmental sustainability. But environmental sustainability could easily not be in their actual built environment. Yeah, it could be some way of creating energy, but it could also be increased investment in transit. It could be a multiple of other things rather than just the built environment itself, right? And so I would like the language in there changed to make it a little more broad than just with the built environment, because the way you read it now, it looks like you're talking about within the construction itself. And even in LEED and all the different things, it gives you way more flexibility as to what you can do for environmental environmental sustainability. And then when it goes on to talk about the report, given the new language, I was a little bit of a loss to understand exactly what they were reporting. I didn't go back and read the whole development agreement to try to say, okay, they're reporting only on environmental sustainability? Are they also having to report on what they're doing for the social and economic sustainability too? So I don't really understand what that report does, who it goes to, who sees it, and then who makes the judgment of what else might have to be done to support the sustainability. And admittedly, I didn't, because this is not in my 40%, I didn't go back and read the paragraphs to see if it's actually in there. But I'm sure you all remember, and maybe if you guys bring it up in conversation, they can clarify exactly what that report is and how it would be used. And that is the, oh, wait, Fred, 75%, Parks Bond passing 75%, initial results.
Thank you, Ms. Marsh. Anybody else like to speak at this time? Okay, we will close the public comment section now at 8:45. Thank you. Okay, so back to discussion. Chantal.
Actually, I would thank you for this comment, Connie. In 3.4.2, in light of what Connie...
Of what, Chantal?
3.4, oh, I'm sorry, it's on page 10.
Of appendix what?
Appendix K.
Thank you.
When you were reading it, your argument that it means that this is a new construction as opposed to the old construction made a lot of sense, but in light of Connie's comment, it does, when you reread it, it does sound like it's only part of the construction and not bigger than that.
I don't understand
So,
what you would like it to say.
well, so the point was that you added new construction, so it's only, so the improvements made to the old building do not transfer over to these ones.
So the nonconformity piece, I think, still applies. Would you agree? Or did we have that specifically in parking? We wouldn't have had it specifically in parking. So the 50% change.
Yeah. You guys are just jumping
Yeah.
impressively, so I'll find that just a second.
So we're going to find that, Chantal, because I think that's the issue, is we kind of established what's considered kind of under the old development agreement and set. And then if they go back in and change something that's set by a certain percentage, then the new expectations are intended to apply.
Right, but I think the word construction is misleading in that sentence as opposed to being under the new plan or under the new...
So we can say,
That's 4.6, the non-conforming is in the land use section.
Right.
And it's titled non-conforming uses and improvements.
Keith, I understand Chantal's part, but I think this means to say kind of what we think it should say, like specifically these new technologies or whatever apply or should be put in place when we move forward with this section of the property.
Yeah, we asked for that
Yeah, we
specifically.
specifically did, but I think the other part maybe.
The point that Connie brought up is that construction in this case may mean that it's only part of the
opposed to the development?
the phase of the construction of the new building.
So
not
we're talking about
necessarily
development,
bigger
overall
than that.
overall development versus
Yeah.
construction. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
But without, my only counter to that is like, if we don't have construction, there's nothing going on and we can't implement sustainability on undeveloped
Well,
property.
But it could be, the building could be constructed and then you add something to it, or you can do something like contributing to wind power outside of the building, and it would still be count toward, I assume, toward the sustainability. It doesn't have to be tied to the construction of it. It can be tied to the operation. It can be tied to something else outside of the building itself.
Commissioners? Any
I think, I get your point, but I think what it says within the project, that is encompassing enough where you could do that.
I think it is too. I think the problem is, so things like construction are the opportunity where you get to say, where's the innovation occurring? And if they enact a new program within the hospital, let's assume that, like, let's just take, because we used it before, with the cafeteria, the cafe, sorry. They choose either an organic only or a buy local program. That's great. That's even could probably meet an innovative criteria. It's not necessarily new construction. And so I think
Keith,
yes.
could we say that instead of include in the new construction, it's associated with the new construction? So that it's not necessarily construction, but that it's happening at the time
Does that work?
construction's
Yeah.
happening?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
Right. And, I have no problem with it, except that it could be understood, and it was understood much more literally than what it was meant to be, I think.
Okay.
I'd like to just add a comment in regards to the fuel tanks not being related to the medical that exists now. I just can't imagine the undertaking of putting in fuel tanks if there's not a good substantial reason to do so. It's very costly and so forth. So I'm not sure if I understood the comment on that.
So just for you guys' sake, the fuel tank issue was discussed at length at the Council Infrastructure Committee. So I think you guys are welcome to do whatever you want to do in the development agreement, but this issue was also talked about at a council committee.
Yeah, and my point being is I go along with what we've already said. And
Yeah, I think just to ping on that a little bit, it says not to exceed a total of 100,000 gallons on the property, and the property assumes both sides of the hospital. They're obviously not going to dig up the hospital, put tanks in there, so this new construction affords them the opportunity to extend their emergency reserves. And at 100 gallons an hour, that's only 1,000 hours of power. I don't know what their generators burn, but this is an emergency center, and if we have one of those 3 or 4 day disasters, I have no problem with the hospital having plenty of fuel.
Well, and you're also going to be expanding the number of beds in the hospital over this period of time. I think the capacity of the fuel has to do with the capacity of the hospital. Have to increase that.
And I have to assume that they're not going to build those facilities if they don't need them. That seems like a very expensive endeavor for no apparent reason.
It's an expensive endeavor.
Yeah. On the master drainage plan.
Yep. So I would say that I think we did make a commitment that it would be with the land use permit. That's my recollection of what Dan and I agreed to. So, which there is obviously a public component to that, so I apologize for missing that. I'm going to blame Lucy since... Just kidding. I'm kidding.
Wow.
So, and provide a design that contemplates required facilities for the entire build-out, and I'm just going to add with the land use permit.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. All right, well, hopefully that addressed some of those concerns, more some clarification there. I know there are other entities involved that will have made decisions or had discussions that we can't necessarily overturn or really discuss further. So I'd like to go ahead and ask again if there's anything else anybody would like to talk about related to this. Okay. So is there... So there's a thought that we'd like to contemplate a recommendation to the City Council. Is there anything else we need to address before we go there?
Do you want to look at the language on K again?
The sustainability? Yeah.
No, apparently not. Sorry.
You going to blame this on Lucy too?
Of course. So, was that it? Or was it down here? It's up here? It's right here?
What?
No, what we just...
Is this the new construction one? I think we addressed that.
Below?
Yeah,
Right
Yeah,
there.
it's right here. It's right here, Alex. We just changed include in to associated with.
Doesn't quite read. Yeah. Because you have a subject and it just kind of, there's no verb.
The master developer shall, in addition to leadership in
It made sense in my head.
Yeah.
Can I blame Lucy?
Yes. Is it provide associated with?
Include.
Well,
I'm going to add include up here.
No, include, wait, you see where include is?
Yes?
What if that was provide?
Providing one minimum sustainability innovation associated with the new construction.
So we could just take include and put it back in, unstrike it. You got to do it again.
I think it works weirdly if you like.
Include in the project?
Yep. Yeah, I'm not moving that much. I'm just doing that. Did we win? Woohoo! All right.
Way to bastardize the American English language.
I'm sure there's somebody not really happy with me right
Please
now.
strike that from the record.
Why did
All right, Alex, are you okay with that? Okay. So actually, if the commissioners don't mind, I'd actually like to ask the applicant if there's any final words they'd like to say. You know, we've been talking about this a lot, and you guys have been very helpful and communicative and so forth, but I just want to give you one final opportunity to say something before we get into a final discussion here.
I just want to say thank you again to all the commission members, as well as Lucy, Keith, Dan, others of the city. It's been a very collaborative process, I think, and I think we have a good agreement, and I hope you guys agree, and only to, I guess, you guys don't really adopt it, but make a recommendation to the city council. So
Right.
thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, so we have a potential motion, but I'd like to see if, what is that, what's below all that?
Oh, I
Is it everything we just went through?
Yes.
Okay, so give me a second to read that.
And all 10 pages.
Okay, so at this time, I'd like to ask if there's a motion, and if there is, I would recommend that the motion reads that first paragraph and then additional edits as stated, or as incorporated through this evening and through the document.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, is there a motion?
Yeah, I move that the Urban Village Development Commission recommend approval of the Swedish Development Agreement red line titled September 2013 with appendices dated 20 August 2013 with the incorporation of the following additional edits as noted below.
Second.
Let me ask one quick question. Dated September 2013, or titled September 2013?
Yeah.
I don't know where that is because the memo says October 2013. Okay, that one.
But the last version of the red line you got says September 2013.
Okay, I just wanted to be.
This is the document that you guys are approving that has red lines and then with these additional edits.
Okay.
So sorry for that confusion.
Okay, so the motion reads that that the recommended approval is the development agreement plus the red line document and edits from tonight's meeting.
Yes.
Okay, so we have and
move to direct the UVDC chair to forward this recommendation to the city council for their consideration.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to take a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, passed unanimously. We will forward the recommendation on to the City Council. Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody's work on this. City, as usual, and the applicant as well. We look forward to the next
one.
One. But following through with the stuff that you guys have done so far. So thank you.
Well, it's such a good example of what we already see, you know.
Yeah, actually, I want to talk about. We're not done yet. We have some other things to deal with. Sorry?
You're losing the crowd.
I'm not losing them. I got the microphone. We're not done with the meeting yet. All right. So I had a couple of questions I wanted to bring up, but I wanted to bring up any open discussion beyond tonight's topic already. So, Scott, did you have something?
No, just curious in regards to intent on agenda.
Okay, so November 19th is stated as the next meeting. Is that going to be the case?
Mm-hmm. We're
Okay.
going to be bringing the Discovery Heights STP back to you.
Okay. And that will be in this room again?
As far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So I just wanted to, yes, did you have something else? You look like you had something else.
I do, but go ahead.
No, please.
I am curious, so in light of, as we're nearing the completion of the build-out within the Highlands, right, there's been some interesting observations as it relates to parking, on-street parking, along the main southern, I'm totally drawing a blank on the name of the road.
8th.
Is it 8th?
8th.
Driving, the drop that takes us down to I-90, right, going past Safeway?
Drive and 9th Avenue?
Oh, I'm sorry.
7 9th Avenue, right? So my observations, and I'm curious as to others seeing this as well, is entry points for parking lots and parking being allowed right up to the entry point, which in turn is creating blind spots for oncoming traffic. So I'm curious if, one, folks are seeing that, and two, if that has been noted by folks with the city, and three, is there a game plan around mitigating that?
So let me just circuit that and say it's being, the city's engineer is evaluating that as we speak and was either making a recommendation today or tomorrow on what measures should be taken.
So that's, you're talking about Ninth Avenue, the thoroughfare, basically, and putting parking next to Starbucks, for example, next to Safeway?
I think what he's
Is that what we're
speaking
referring to?
to, because we've been hearing about it as well, is the parking close to driveway exits off-site and whether people can, have good sight lines to cars when they're turning out.
I understand that. I'm just trying to clarify. Is that like where the Starbucks is? Where is
Safeway.
where is
Like
that?
Safeway.
Safeway.
But it-
Okay.
it's-
Coming out of
I've driven
Safeway, trying to
anywhere.
turn left,
Okay.
so southbound traffic coming in.
All right, that's what I'm trying to understand. And the gas station too, or no?
There's no parking by the gas
Right,
station
okay.
on 9th.
So that's a prime example, right, is the Safeway southbound lanes, but also other entry and exit points as well. There is a pattern in certain locations where parking is allowed currently, or at least people are parking there at points of entry and exit, which in turn are creating a line of sight issue. Again, observation, curious if others are seeing that. Sounds like it is, but.
Yeah, that's sort of, I'll tag on to that because I think there are, I don't know, there are quite a few things that are, that I think need to be looked at. For example, we talked, Dan and I think at one point talked about the fire hydrants in front of a couple of businesses. They're not, there's no red curve, there are no signs, so people know that they're there, that they can park close to it or not close to it. And I see people pulling in front of them, putting their flashers on, like it's okay to do that. And, so I think we need to be a little more, so I guess my point is I'm wondering if,
I think that.
like, who's taking a look at this stuff and, can we help in some way? I think things like, the one-way signs are not good enough. People are getting in nice wrecks up there. I think the fact that the no right turn on red are being completely ignored because those signs are smaller than a rearview mirror. I think that there's a lot of things that are more safety than anything else that are not just complaints by people who want motorcycle parking. And I don't know. I think we've brought them up a lot of times, and I just don't know who's doing what, or if I would love to just do a tour with somebody from the transportation department or something and just point out what I know, just because I look at it every single day and I think about it in this way.
I just want to add, I think those are somewhat universal problems throughout the city. I know in Tallis, we have the exact same issues. People are parking way beyond the radius of the curb, so you have to go way out in the street to make your turn. So it's just something I think that the city needs to address in legal terms as far as addressing
That may be true. I think that's probably true. I don't know what's going on in Tallis.
They're just
Yeah.
parking right in front of fire hydrants like the law doesn't exist
Right.
anymore.
Well, no, the law does exist about that, but I'm saying the new construction in the Highlands with Grand Ridge Plaza is causing a bunch of safety issues that didn't exist. Not taken away from Tallis issues, because I'm not aware of those, but I think we're speaking specific to the new construction of Grand Ridge Plaza, right? Okay. So what can we do there in terms of someone to talk to, or I don't know, what's the process?
The whole one-way signs, there's a whole additional one-way signs and right turn onlys that are being installed. There's additional, Regency is talking about adding additional, like, not just the arrow, but saying only. I mean, there's an awareness of trying to go back and systematically look at several of those issues.
So would you say that there's an audit going on and an attempt to remedy some of these concerns? Because I just don't know if it's piecemeal, if somebody's really going through it and saying, okay, what are the real issues up here?
I mean, I've seen a plan for all of Grand Ridge Plaza showing where additional, right turn only and one-way signs are going in, looking at the whole area. So I don't think it's piecemeal.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not.
I think an audit is a good choice of words.
An audit is a good choice of words. Yeah.
It's due the end of this week.
Okay. And is there any opportunity for input other than sending something to the website? Because, I mean, again, we observe this stuff maybe in a different way than a lot of people do, and we drive it also as consumers and drivers every day. So is there an opportunity for us to sit down and say, hey, what are you seeing? Okay, I'll concur, that's what we're seeing too, but here's some other things we're seeing that you might not be?
I don't know how to answer that, Jeff, as far as the body goes, but if anybody wants to take a walk with me, just send me an email anytime and we'll meet up there, and I'd love as much feedback as you can give me.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think we should do that. Chantal, thank you.
Well, my There we go. My experience, as usual, is a little different. It's a walking experience, and it's been interesting walking through a lot of those areas, visually as well as safety and whatnot. But I wanted to specifically mention that I came upon a business on Highland Drive that, as I was walking in on, as pedestrians would be doing on Highland Drive, that was actually closed to pedestrians on that side. So it was open to the parking lot on the other side.
That's being remedied.
Okay, thank you.
I don't even know which business. I know one business that did that, and I basically told Regency they won't get a C of O if the door is not open.
I was going to that business to do business, and I decided not to do business in
right.
that business.
And I know some people from Port Blakely have gone in and said the same thing.
Okay.
So we're working on that message because
that this is not just a car-oriented.
Well, it's a requirement. That's something that,
right.
And I appreciate you following.
Well, and even from a car orientation, I think it's foolish. I mean, if I was driving to the business I'm thinking of, I'd park on the street before I went in the parking lot.
Yeah.
This business is one where you might be carrying things in. And
sounds like we're thinking of the same business.
yes.
We've noticed the same
So
thing.
I think that one may have already been remedied.
Okay.
And I just want you to know that Craig Ramey, who, is, I don't know exactly what his title is, but he's the person who was here from Regency, and he's kind of in charge of this project, said, when I mentioned that to him, he said, I'll be talking to them today. So, there is no pushback from anyone who has any say that situation should be happening.
As an update I brought up before, the fake windows at the corner of Highlands and Federal, I think it is.
So
they now have nothing on it. They don't even try to make it look like a window. It's blank with just. Right.
And my understanding is that the ARC, the Architectural Review Committee, has been talking to them about the fact that they have to put something in those windows. There are also some businesses who have covered all of their windows with decals and things, and my understanding is they're going to have to remove those because as we don't allow signs to cover more than 25%. So there's just, I think one of the challenges is we're dealing with a lot of national companies that are not used to our level of hands-on TLC. And so they're just, it's just taking some time for them to understand, they're not reading the sign code, so they do what they've done every place else, and we have to come back and say you can't do that. And so, it seems to be getting remedied. It's just not happening, as fast as we might like.
Michael.
Thank you. Lucy, speaking of parking on the street and not the parking lot, with the decreased parking up in Highlands, I've experienced that quite a lot lately with the businesses being open. Have we considered for the next project we're looking at, the one we already reviewed, our concerns that we had about the limited parking?
I'm sorry, Michael, can you say
we had the limited, it seems we decided not follow the code for the parking for the project we're going to be looking at here.
The
Have you
DevCo
guys,
project?
Yeah, the DevCo project. Have you guys prepared, as presented, it didn't meet code?
I would disagree with that characterization, but they are asking for an allowed modification.
Okay. My feeling on that is I'd like to hear a lot more. Just to let you guys know before we even discuss it, I'd still like to hear a lot more about that because my feelings, having experienced the Highlands quite a bit recently, have solidified that I'm not necessarily favorable to modifying that code, and I don't know how the other commissioners feel about that.
So we are working on a response memo, and it's primarily focused on parking.
Okay.
Carl, I know you had something.
Yeah, I just had one compliment because we're very good at pointing out things we don't like. And I actually wrote something on the city website. Thank you for the High Street re-striping and buttoning, and hallelujah, amen. Thank you very much. So thanks to the city for that.
Yeah.
And 10th, for that matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, it is, and I'm glad to hear you liked it as much as some of the staff did once they saw it.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that worked out for you.
I agree. So I want to continue on with mine, though. So, Chantel, I just want you to know it's not just driving that I am concerned with, too. I walk that Grand Ridge Plaza almost every day. So I understand what you're saying. And for me, I'm going to ask about, and I think I brought it up to you at one point, Lucy, but the shared parking and security. I came across a security guard who was on her first shift and didn't really know what was going on. But
Well, I sat down with Craig afterwards,
Okay.
and
well, let me
Yeah,
let me
I'm
explain what's going on. I won't go into the whole story, but the sense I got was that there was some direction that, they were keeping an eye on where people parked and make sure they were going to the stores nearby. A security guard. The stores or businesses nearby where they park, and that they're not going to other places across the street, whatever. And that concerned me because I thought we had shared parking agreements, and Lucy assured me that we do. But it's really important to me that people are able to park in one place and visit as many places as they want to by foot, and it should be encouraged to do so. So I just wanted to see where we were on that.
I suggested to Craig Ramey that that people were not understanding that this was a parking district, and that all of the parking in the district was available for all the users, and that they might need to add some additional signage that communicated that. And so they are in the process of designing a kind of wayfinding informational signage that will be not just say parking, which I think was a good thing that Safeway added, but says Grand Ridge Parking District or something, parking, so that it's better communicates that, it's not just the parking in the block with the building is only for that building, because that, I think, is a little misleading.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's great. That's terrific. And then I shouldn't, but I want to ask again, was there any movement on motorcycle or scooter parking in Grand Ridge Plaza at all?
I have not.
Still 0 spots, except on 8th.
So I have not asked them if they're going to provide additional. They did mention they had heard from you. What I am waiting to hear back on is how they intend to address the violations that have been happening, because that may be the way to get there.
Okay. And then the other thing was just a few of us had a couple questions on the lakeside grading. I got your response to my email today. And I think, so my question about the grading is, as I drive past the lakeside property that we approved a while back, it appeared that the grade level seems much higher than what I was anticipating. Yes, on the severed pit. And so my question, and I know there were others that had the same concern, that not about what the grading plan says, but are the numbers in the view, what's the word I'm looking for? Compliance? Yeah, I guess the compliance on it, but...
Are the contour elevations that we saw in the diagram the same things that are happening in reality?
Because I recall somebody saying, well, we raised balloons and we counted the feet and how far it would be and what the sight lines would be. But I've got to believe that those, when they were standing there, I don't know if they added 15 feet or 20 feet and started there and went up to 85, or if they went up 85 feet from where they were standing. I just don't know, because it seems a lot higher, and I just want to make sure that it's not. The floor seems a lot higher than it was when they had taken those measurements, so I don't know how they did those measurements, I guess.
Well, I don't know about the measurements, but based on the construction plan was checked against the grading plan in the development agreement, and the grading in the, that's taking place, there have been spot elevation checks, and they are consistent with the grading plan. Now, the filling and grading is still occurring, so it's in progress, but so far, those things are consistent with the grading plan.
And that would be consistent with what we were looking at with it filled in, not
Yes?
So the contours we saw were what they were doing cut and fill to, not current.
So there'll be no surprises that these buildings are higher and the sight lines from the existing homes will be seeing a lot more than what they expected. Is that what we expect? No surprises. Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right. Anything else? No? Okay, let's go ahead and adjourn at 9:17, 9:18. Sorry. Thank you.